Alrighty, settle in, get ready, we're going to go. Well, first of all, thanks for being here. Happy spring. I think today is officially the first day of spring, so very cool. It's been very odd weather in the, high 70s or whatever, which is very unusual for springtime, certainly, and Seattle, that's for sure. Especially when we had piles of snow in our backyard that just 2 days ago disappeared. So, amazing. All right, well, thanks again for joining us. This is March, so we're well into the year. This is pretty fantastic. We can continue to grow, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. First of all, as always, thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to Aaron. There's Aaron. Yay, Aaron. So Aaron is our sponsor for Comotion, and Comotion has a lovely catchphrase called "Powered by Comotion, your innovation partner." So thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Comotion. And for those of you that don't know Comotion, it's basically just a startup hub, and you can sort of see smart people doing their magic over there. And of course, Scott and Dan are part of Comotion as well. So there you go. Look at that, it works. As well, thanks to Yavi for their support as well. Yavi is a connected commerce software platform that creates a transparent marketplace between roasters and producers in the coffee supply chain. So thank you, gentlemen. And of course, we can start to smell the coffee wafting through, so this is a good thing. So just as an FYI, we're doing a recording for YouTube as we always do. However, my power supply went bad, and so we're on battery power, and so it's a race against the clock. So unless someone happens to have a Dell power supply, we'll wing it and do what we can do. Always something. Okay, on to community announcements. A little bit about Hyperledger Seattle. We've now just about tripled in size since the start of last year. We're just about, 820 something. When we get to 840, I sent an email off to Marissa and to Aaron and said, when we get to 840, we've tripled since beginning of last year. So we're moving at a good rate. I'm happy for that. Thanks for your participation making that happen as well. We're growing about 1.5 persons per day, which is fantastic. This is really good considering that the crypto winter sort of slowed things down a bit. But we seem to be a little bit more impervious to it, which is fantastic. As well, HSM is now the largest blockchain framework meetup in the Pacific Northwest, which is fantastic. And again, thank you for that. And I think Ken and I were just talking about Ethereum. I think they're going through a reboot, and I think they're probably number 2. So we need to keep on our toes. This is friendly fire. We like to hear this. This is good incentive for continuing to grow the momentum here in the Seattle area. As well, we've seen a 10% increase in active membership, which is amazing. I'm sorry, did I say 10%? 10x increase, 10 times since last year, which has made the Meetup experience a great social networking opportunity for the blockchain community here in the Pacific Northwest. So again, thank you. It's been an amazing year, about a year and a half or so. So with that said, I am going to be segueing away. This is my second to last hosting event. I'm going to be handing this over to Marissa in May, and she's going to pick up and run with this meetup organization. We're firing on all cylinders. Marissa already has folks in the queue, which is fantastic. She's got some great plans. So that happens in May. Are you ready? No. So that's fantastic. And again, thanks. I've had a great experience since the beginning of last year, so it's been a fun ride. Fantastic. And I'm continuing to work in Hyperledger. I chair the Hyperledger Healthcare Special Interest Group, so I'm going to continue to do that. Okay, so let's do our raffle. So where is my phone? I got my phone over here. So Marissa's going to go find the check-in sheet. And I'm going to fire up our magic app. So we're raffling off one of two items. We're going to raffle two things off. The T-shirt. Who doesn't know about the raffle? Who hasn't All right, okay. Oh, you guys are going to have fun. Is this first timers? Oh, awesome, you may get something. That's the best part, free stuff. A t-shirt, which is always cool, and I can never remember what it's called. It's an insulated water bottle. Thermos thing, yeah, there you go. Seth's got one, yeah. All right, 119. Yeah, keep going. Oh, Dan, wow. I don't think we've ever had this happen where both of the guests actually got. Oh, another Dan. Oh, sorry, Dan. Sorry. Oh, an XL won't fit you. All right, so Dan. Good grief! I feel like I'm in like a zone. Ugh. All right, it shouldn't be that hard. It's just stuff. All right. So we've got upcoming. So I sent an email out in 2 weeks, which is a pretty short time frame. Garrett Conity of Conity Consulting is going to be speaking here on blockchain DevOps. And if you think about it, this is going to be a big deal going forward. He's sort of prescient in looking ahead to realize, we got to do something about making sort of ease of use for spinning things up. In fact, Dan, you're going to be talking maybe a little bit about sort of the ease of use tool-wise, right?
On the dev side, yeah.
Yeah, not so much DevOps, but something in that order. Yeah. Oh, good. Perfect. So Garrett will be here on April 2nd, and the title of his talk is Blockchain DevOps, Using Better Tools to Deploy and Manage Blockchain Solutions. And then scheduled for May 29th, but it's not announced yet. We've got an upcoming panel discussion with Lisa Mackey, former co-founder and CEO of Pocketduck, and Scott Austin, Senior Exec Vice President of Hyperledger, to talk on the topic, and this is still a very long topic title. So, how do you leverage a distributed architecture to solve challenges in complex enterprise ecosystems with competing interests and motivations? So Marissa's going to work on the title, and in fact, this is your debut, really. You put this whole thing together, and the best part is our very first panel discussion ever. So she's coming out of the stables hot. So this is going to be phenomenal. So anyway, so that's 5/29, but it's unannounced because she's still working on the details. And then, the moment that we get everything sort of squared away, it'll go up and you'll get the meetup announcement. And then in the June-July timeframe, we're going to have David Holding, he's a principal healthcare lead at Microsoft Corporation. He's going to be reprising his blockchain security presentation given at the Blockchain Symposium at the HIMSS conference earlier this year. And I met David at the conference, liked what he did, realized that he's a local guy at Microsoft, and he's thrilled to come and speak, and I think Marissa's going to be working out the details with him on that as well. So that's going to be sort of June-July timeframe would be my guess. Anyway, that's it. So anyone else have just some comments, announcements that they'd like to make in the blockchain community? Anyway, all right, so on to our presentation here. So I'm thrilled. So these guys live here, and we've been trying to engage these guys for a while. They're super busy. They're doing really cool stuff. If those of you that are drinking coffee, you realize this is a good thing. This is Seattle. I mean, come on. So they're going to be talking on upending the coffee cart, blockchain and disruption. So Scott's the founder CEO of Yave.io, a blockchain trading platform for tropical agriculture. He's also founder of Onda Origins Coffee, pioneering specialty roasting brand through which he realized the need for transactional integration of data flow to a source of record for the coffee supply chain. Since its inception in 2017, Yave Incorporated has made international headlines with ongoing end-to-end blockchain projects connecting complete supply chains from coffee producer to consumer. Did I miss anything in that?
No, great.
You guys you were talking with IBM a couple weeks ago, so I mean you're running, you're moving fast, so that's cool. And can I share this? It's your family too. It's your brother is part of this.
My brother and I founded Onda Origins together.
That's amazing. So we're mic'd for YouTube, not for the audience here. And so if you're going to talk, make sure you have this in front of you at all times, a little switch on and off. Otherwise, and I wasn't paying attention either, what Scott said probably won't be caught in the YouTube. So So we've got the lav mic for these guys, and then this for talking. So anyway, so that said, and Dan, I forget Dan. So Dan is your CTO at Yave. He combines his vast experience in casino and healthcare CRM and database development with a passion for learning new tech and solving problems. So casino. Now don't say anything because I don't have this, but yeah, say something. Okay. So anyway, all right, now we can say, welcome these guys, and a round of applause. Thanks very much for making this happen. Scott, you go first, and I'm going to hand this off to you.
So yeah, I'm Scott Tupper. Owned Origins is the coffee brand that my brother and I started in Seattle after years of living and working in tropical ag communities, myself in Polynesia and my brother Paul in Central America. What we found as a result of our experiences within the farm communities was a shortcoming out of essentially the certification, labeling, and direct trade models in coffee to deliver the ideals that they purported towards farmer empowerment. So we thought the only way to do that would be to engage actual shoppers in a way that connects directly to a farmer. And this was long before we were thinking anything about blockchain. This is with a brand, consumer packaged goods brand, Onda. And this is the coffee that you guys just tried, which was blockchain traced from the last harvest in Guatemala. After about a year of getting Onda going and working extra hard in our value chain and being back and forth to the countries we were sourcing from, we realized the need to standardize the way that we were logging the way we bought, but also our remittance program, this revenue share that we do with farmers. So from there, blockchain was grabbing a lot of headlines, and we had spoken to a couple of service providers and actually tried to help implement one of them into a value chain in Brazil. And what we noticed was essentially the blockchain being a team sport, it offered the perfect solution for our sourcing because we have a very transparent model of selling coffee. But what it lacked was an incentive structure for industry adoption for the intermediaries and all of the logistics and service providers in the middle. So we've spent the last year plus working on that. So yeah, Dan is our CTO. He's developed all of the actual tech on top of Hyperledger. And then we're joined today also by Rahul, who's our CFO. And he and I met after an innovation summit in Antigua, Guatemala. He's lived in Guatemala for the past 5 years and is now joining us here in Seattle as well. I'm going to pull up a Prezi. This is on for presenting, or? Okay. The coffee you tried was from Yvonne Herrera out of Villa Canales, Guatemala. It was, to our knowledge, the first blockchain coffee out of the Americas and landed here in Seattle with great impact for Yvonne, who about doubled her income over the experience, but also really good for Onda and the other roaster that bought it. We were able to charge a premium because people had greater information about the coffee, and they were excited about having a trustworthy shopping experience as opposed to a greenwashed coffee shopping experience, let's say. Where's this go? And Yvonne herself got to come visit Seattle last September and share her story as well. So yeah, we're Yave. We are a two-sided marketplace, which, based on the experience I had with Onda Origins, which still exists, and I encourage you all to buy ondaorigins.com. We realized a greater opportunity for impact and business by standardizing the sourcing methodology we had perfected within our own supply chain. And we wanted to enable more and more farmers to be able to access roasters like ourselves. We've surveyed the industry extensively. One of our team members, Kai Chang, is a business analytics and data intelligence guy, and he's built a bunch of surveying for us to reach out to other roasters who've signed up onto our platform. And what we've found is overwhelmingly, truly 91% of roasters are willing to pay a premium for coffee that has unit level price information about the farmer payment component. Because right now that is obfuscated through intermediaries in the first to export mile, let's say. In coffee value chain, normally when you're drinking a cup of coffee, it's already changed hands 10 or 11 times. So how did we get here? Does anyone want to venture a guess as far as what this number is? What is it?
The profit in the middle?
No, so this is the commodity market price for coffee, futures price for coffee as it closed today per pound, 94 cents or $94 per 100-pound quintal sack, 94 cents a pound. And the cost of production on the global scale is estimated to be about $1.65 a pound. So right now, farmers are running from coffee. They're going out of business. We have internal and external immigration crises from Central America, as we've seen broadly publicized in the US media. A lot of this movement comes from small farmers who cannot make money. Question?
That's just the raw bean, the green or dried bean. I don't know what.
Yeah. So I probably should have put a slide in here explaining the coffee supply chain as it is physically. We have a fruit, much like a cherry, that is picked off of a tree high in the mountains in the tropics. That's the coffee belt, is the tropics at high altitude. It's picked, it's in a fruit, it's surrounded by mucilage and juice and skin. That needs to be milled in a process called wet milling. Then we have something called parchment, which has a little husk around it. Parchment is like a peanut skin around coffee bean. And from there, that needs to be dry milled and converted into green coffee. Green coffee is then sorted for defects, at which point it is exportable. So an exporter normally is the only one who has the capital goods necessary in order to do the dry milling process, because that machinery is hundreds of thousands of dollars when it's really sophisticated. So coffee is a game of scale, which is why it falls into the commodity category the way it's commercialized. However, just to add a little bit of market context, in the last 20 years or so, coffee has decommodified itself in the consumer market. Specialty coffee, as the category is called, is a $30 billion sector in the US, and that has grown steadily 2 to 4% year over year for the last 10 years. So right now we have people who are willing to pay $5 for a cup of coffee, but a market which is still demanding, this is green export, to answer your question actually, this is the green coffee in the value chain. So a farmer's getting a fraction of this in many cases. We're at the bottom, well, we're falling right now, and as low as we've seen in 8 years. We're in a trough, and we don't know where the bottom will be. So the way that this price is determined is as a result of global supply forecasting. Primarily Brazil is the driver there, they're the largest producer, and also weather patterns and futures trading itself. So what we have currently is consumer demand at an all-time high, willingness to pay at an all-time high, yet countries like Brazil, which have the technical capacity for industrial agriculture, mechanized picking, major infrastructure like freeways, group-owned, community-owned mills to do the wet milling and the dry milling that enable them to produce coffee at a fraction of the cost of production as, let's say, Guatemala or Ethiopia or a country with much more hostile terrain and less infrastructure development. So right now, as any commodity, we're saying apples Brazil are apples Guatemala, but the reality is the cost of production is different, and we now have substantial consumer evidence and scientific sensory analytical evidence that the coffees are in fact different in profile, value, and all kinds of other characteristics. So people are willing to pay for this coffee at Met Market. I think $13 or $14 is what we charge, and this is a pound. And then if we were to produce 27 cups out of this, we could probably sell each cup for $4. We'll find out. We're opening our cafe in May-ish down in Hillman City. So there's over $100 of value in a pound of roasted coffee. So the entire mission is to bridge all that value created and the consumer willingness to shop that way to the farmers themselves. And we found blockchain to be an elegant solution in the area of grand theory, but in practice it's really, really hard to get so many different people speaking different languages of business, different languages of language, different languages of foreign exchange and currency to play a team sport like blockchain. So that's been my charge in this entire effort. And in a minute, we'll get to what Dan's had to do to accommodate all of these variables as well. So I'm going to play a really brief video, just to a highlight of the Yvonne success case out of Guatemala.
Guatemalan coffee farmers like Yvonne Herrera work hard to produce their coffee beans, and she's proud of her crop.
We're going to pick a great coffee. That's what we've been working towards, and this year we're seeing the results of 2 years of hard work.
Getting a good price for her coffee is another matter. Yvonne used to sell on the international coffee futures market, where buyers purchase coffee at a predetermined price for a future delivery date. Now she can sell directly to an independent coffee roaster in the US. She's using the blockchain technology of Seattle startup Origins. They record, manage and confirm transactions from the coffee grower through the importer to the roaster in a transparent way.
We talk about hashing and transaction to the chain, which means memorializing the actors and assets traded onto the blockchain so that it's there forever. You can do that through SMS, applications on a cell phone, or a computer.
Origins believe enough consumers want verifiable information on where their coffee comes from and will pay a premium for quality roasted small batch beans.
What we want to do is take those two parties and really unite them. And blockchain technology is a tool to do that. So that if we're verifying that we're paying a better wage back to the grower, the consumer's verifying that they're willing to pay that wage back to the grower, we're saying, yes, it's actually going to them. And then that's where real change can happen. When you're financially empowering people to make decisions that benefit their families, their communities, and the land around them.
Yvonne's beans now fetch a price that exceeds even fair trade prices. So she can invest in her farm and pay better wages to her workers, raising the standard of living across her community.
So that's the story of Yvonne. And actually this year we were able, something we're really proud of, we were able to get 15 pickers, seasonal laborers on her farm bank accounts. And so all of that happens from consumer willingness to pay for this, but also the participation of the entire supply chain and enabling us to, what the heck is going on here? And enabling us to do experiments like what we did with Yvonne. So where does it all come from? As I mentioned, I worked in international development and I studied actually anthropology and Latin American studies in college. I found myself living in Polynesia and then starting Onda and still being really pulled towards the farmer experience. I volunteered for a USAID program called Farmer to Farmer and wound up auditing an association in Western Guatemala. That is, an association in coffee is a mother structure to a cooperative. So a cooperative is a way that people pool their resources and go in together on logistics and wet milling. The association would be above that to do the dry milling and the exporting. So it's a way, in theory, that a farmer is empowered to own a piece of the value chain that's 2, 3, or 4 steps further along than they ever would have. In practice, they're rampant with problems, inefficiencies, corruption, and lack of traceability. So the association that I audited had 2,100 smallholder farmers, primarily of Mayan, Quiche, and Cachamul descent throughout Western Guatemala. However, all of the power and decision-making is consolidated in an office in Quetzaltenango. The audit revealed that there were about $500,000 of coffee missing between inventory and sales team. And in spite of being 100% Fair Trade Organic certified, the association itself, nor any of the 8 cooperatives underneath it, could identify where the coffee was coming from. So what you'll have happening in the western highlands of Guatemala on the border with Mexico oftentimes is money laundering as well as human trafficking. So money laundering is basically it's a major drug channel into the U.S. is from all parts of South and Central America to Guatemala, and then through that land border into Mexico, and through Mexico to the U.S. What you'll have is actual parties in the drug trade paying above market, local market prices for coffee to farmers in order to have that coffee, and then that coffee will wind up being organic, fair trade, whatever certification you want to think of, and wind up at an association like this one. So there's a big, big problem and a big risk, I think, a corporate risk, if someone were to go and expose actually where does that coffee end up and what are these buying practices of a company revealing. So right now you have a lot of specialty coffee and non-specialty coffee companies that do really big, expensive CSR programs, but they willingly and deliberately turn their head from their own supply chain by utilizing third-party sources of truth, let's say, so certifications and even in-house standards that are meant to guarantee the way they source, because they know that they will never gain unit-level traceability. The reason blockchain could be transformational there is that you're actually giving power to the groups at the bottom of the food chain to say, no, this is our product and this is where this came from. Like, you can't label that, and this is what we were paid, among others. Yeah.
Is there a risk if you aggregate Is there a risk that you aggravate the cartels with this process?
Possibly, but money laundering itself is probably not the biggest challenge. The challenge is the status quo within coffee, where these exporters and importers are used to this arbitrage game where they're able to buy really cheap and hold out and pre-finance maybe a fraction of someone's crop with the guarantee that it'll turn in the entire thing. So the risk is really more the existing actors, the entrenched actors in the value chain, than it is the weird things that are happening around the farms. Because you could launder through house real estate acquisitions, all the other stuff that's already happening on the border as it is. But yeah, I mean, theoretically there is. Probably not to the company doing it, more so in the communities.
Mm-hmm. Couple of questions actually. One is there really consumer demand for this kind of transparency? Is there a heavy demand that's picking up? Are people really demanding for this kind of transparency before they consume, day-to-day products? Do you actually see that?
It depends on the market. For whatever reason, marketing through coffee companies as well as certifying agencies, there seems to be a consumer affinity towards the plight of the coffee farmer. I don't know whether or not that's true for the rubber in my shoe, right? Or for the, name a product, broccoli that is coming from, I don't know. But I think, this was born of a consumer packaged goods brand which has succeeded by leveraging blockchain. So it's there, but there's a narrative component and there's a whole effort that goes into this, which is contemporary to all of the actual technical capacity building.
Yeah, because if you look at regular grocery shopping, let's say vegetables people buy, I think by and large people tend to trust, let's say, the organic label, right? Mm-hmm. And even if people wanted to understand the entire history of the product from farm to shelf, yeah. I think you can still achieve that without blockchain, and you give a QR code, people scan it, see it, fine, right? Yeah. At the consumer level, people who are going to the grocery store and buying products, do they really understand blockchain, or do they actually expecting something like that? Some level of transparency. Give them just show them how this product arrived at the shelf. I think people will take it. Now the reason why I'm coming to it is because just few months before, I was actually running a blockchain company. Our company was actually called Data Chain. So we were actually, we built a very scalable blockchain platform for the digital data supply chain, mm-hmm. not the physical supply chain, but the data supply chain, where data gets exchanged, hands between different companies and gets morphed and actually sold. So we kind of got into this problem trying to see if we can actually bring in blockchain and transparency. But after a lot of time, what we realized is even in B2B, people don't care. There was really no demand for blockchain-based transparency.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of, it's kind of hard to believe that at consumer level that kind of demand would actually exist.
I would argue that it's easier with consumers. B2B, that's just going to be, how does this make me money? Consumerism, we're talking about how people feel. How does this product correlate to my ideals and to my perception of myself in the world? And the risk there is, of course, that consumers don't understand blockchain. Don't get me confused there. The challenge is to build the brand of blockchain in a way that is supporting these ethics and ideals and enables them to have the feeling of doing right by simply shopping. Because we know that people won't read. And they won't, I could look at the hashes that Dan is creating for our supply chains and it means nothing to me, right? But if the actual governance and agency created in the value chain is there, I think consumers do care. It's overwhelming in Nielsen reports that people want to shop sustainably. Right now, they're just being deceived. So I don't know your experience with digital supply chains or with B2B.
So for example, let's take the context of privacy laws, right? So there's a lot of talk going around saying, oh, consumers care about privacy laws, they want more privacy, blah, 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 and all of that. And then there came GDPR, where it actually gave people rights to take control of their privacy, and you started seeing all of these pop-ups in all of these websites saying, hey, we are going to track you, are you okay with it, and things like that. And at the end of it, very clear statistics which say that almost 95 to 98% of the people were just fine with all this tracking. Mm-hmm. They actually ended up saying, okay, please track me, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
Okay, for all the talk and 10 years of effort into GDPR, it almost feels like GDPR the whole regulation was created to just legitimize what Google and Facebook was doing. Nothing changed.
But
their revenues are actually increasing. Right?
Why do you feel that was a market-driven
since we spent almost 12 months digging into this, right? So 12 months of not part of my job, of doing my startup, right? So heart and soul, 12 hours a day, trying to figure this out. What we kind of understood is that consumers, at the end of it, given multiple options, they just prefer something that is easy, cost effective, easily that they can get hands on and keep moving on. I know that's, there is a lot of talk. Another thing that people are saying is, unless these things are pushed by regulations, consumers are not really going to come up and demand. I had a hard time selling a business model around these.
I think it's
features.
clear that if you look at the market cap of a Google or a Facebook or whatever, over the past 10 years when these data regulations are being put in place, that nobody gives a shit. Like, why?
For example,
why do we feel that the regulation being passed is a market response? What we have in shopping are market responses to the way that people want to feel when they buy a thing. And I know it's different than like a digital supply chain, but in these supply chains there are inequities, and people want to shop the right way. They do. I have experience with it.
Well, a good one is the organic market. A good example is the organic food market. When you go in and pay $5 a gallon for milk instead of $3, you want to know that it's organic. And anytime that any discrepancy in that undermines your confidence in paying that money. So that's really what you're trying to do, and is guarantee this accuracy.
Also, I think coffee is a unique audience, right? There is a large subset of coffee drinkers that want to know that. I mean, it's almost as though they want to know the farmer themselves, and the farther they can understand or reach down, the more they're willing to pay.
Yeah.
And that's a given. So I think it's a lot different than maybe B2B or selling data or something like that. This is somebody who can afford it, and to them it's almost one-upmanship. I've heard people talk about coffee, and it's like, well, what are you drinking, and where did it come from, and everything.
It's a craft product, and I think for whatever reason, I empathize with you. I think I wish people, including myself, took all of the data violations from Facebook and everything else more seriously. But I don't see whether or not there's been a market response indicating that they do. And within these products, they do. If we're talking about $3 a gallon versus $5 a gallon, there's $2 a gallon for us to all make by making that experience more true, which blockchain enables when done right. It could also go the other way. Someone could spin up blockchain just to gloss over whatever they're doing in their supply chain that's not right. And I'm sure that's happening as we speak. So it all starts with mapping the value chain, understanding who are these 10, 11, 12 actors, and what are the conversations that happen when a first mile asset is sold. This is something we did with a value chain in the Philippines through partnership with the Asia Pacific Foundation, and just really trying to understand the unit economic costs that go into selling coffee and trading it, and what is the time value of money in these things, what about the financing, and how do we try to, if we have this beautiful vision of empowering producers, how do we actually go and execute that? And this part is different in almost every cup of coffee that you'll drink. There's no standardization. So every coffee has its own, I don't know, DNA or whatever history behind it that makes unit level traceability incredibly difficult. And one of the things that we've found is it's not the traceability itself that is the value driver with the coffee. It's the knowledge, like you're getting to with your commentary about whether or not anyone cares. It's the knowledge that people had options, agency, informed consent around what the market value of their product was when it would ultimately get to Seattle or New York or London. So our theory is that blockchain is not the solution itself. What's really the solution is the access, market access, having the ability to have a repeat high-end market buyer rather than depending on someone trading a futures exchange contract and then going and scouring the countryside for the lowest price they can to buy coffee. So from theory to practice, I think I've already kind of gone through this, but basically it's all really fun to talk about traceability and a glass pipeline and all of the other buzzwords that we use around blockchain. But the reality is, if I didn't have a coffee roasting company to buy this to begin with, we wouldn't have gotten any of this done because it just doesn't, it's extra work, it doesn't make a difference to people, they don't care unless you're creating market access. So it's really all about market access in the case of what we're doing. And there's plenty of money in the margin by disintermediating the arbitrage that currently happens with one actor like Ayave. So we have this May, through partnership with Ana Café, which is the National Coffee Association of the country of Guatemala, an auction that we're doing, which has been opened to all producers in Guatemala, of which there are over 220,000. The top 25 lots that are submitted will then be auctioned and sold to 25 roasters from around the world. Some of them will be participating in person. We have over 60 attendees in person, and then we also have a digital log-on for roasters. And that's the market access component I'm talking about. You need to be able to build this bridge for sales, and then you can implement any kind of tech you want to, if you believe that that's necessary. So that's just more information about the auction. And that's really my brief spiel. Thank you, guys. Yep.